Jwalant, hope you're doing great and welcome to Design Dialogues hosted by Rethinking the Future in collaboration with Fublis. This is your host Bhavya and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Jwalant, the principal architect of andblack Design Studio. Just to give a brief introduction about your studio, andblack Design Studio, established in 2009, is a dynamic architecture firm based in Ahmedabad led by Jwalant and Kanika. The studio's work span diverse scales from master planning and residential towers to interiors and pavilions. Collaboration and innovation lie at the heart of their approach, resulting in thoughtful and impactful design solutions. Thank you for joining us, Jwalan.
Thanks for having me.
So, before starting the questions, I would like you to inform that this interview will be published on the website of Fublis. And so, sign up on the Fublis websites and then you'll get the access to watch this interview. So, shall we proceed with the questions?
Yes.
So, the first question for the day: how does your studio and Black Design Studio approach the design process for projects that vary in different scales and sizes, for example, from master planning to interiors?
So, now we do not have one way to approach design in terms of how they look. Obviously, over many years now, you can even box us that this is how we work. But the idea of any project which we do is to look at the process very, very carefully. Like what is the the thinking behind how we want to, even how we want to approach is a thinking. So we do not have one approach, but how should be the approach is also a part which we think of. Now, when we start a project in that sense, what what connects all the projects together and what separates all the projects is the same thing, is how are we trying to look at a project. So sometimes within scales also there are similarities, where our furniture and our structure might have a similar logic, or our art and our architecture could have similar logic because of structures, because of folding, because of tessellation. But at the same time, architecture might also have a completely different process. So we do not bind ourselves into one way of looking at everything in terms of the scale, and also not look at one thing even if the scales are the same. So we are very open-ended in that sense, and we would like to be in that kind of a platform so that there is a constant challenge. Uh, we are able to, or we are constantly able to challenge ourselves to come up with new ways.
It's really nice and very nice approach of you to take for different projects. So, how did the concept of Cocoon influence the overall design approach for the pre-primary extension at the Bloomingdale International School?
This was something which was, you can say, a very interesting brief, which was given to us by the client. And the brief came that they want a non-conventional space for a project. Now that is also very, very important, because an interesting architecture is not only what an architect thinks it is. Like in today's world, we think that architect is the guy who defines everything. But when you come into the practice, you realize that the client is equally, if not more, involved. But sometimes I would say that the client should be better in terms of what they want to achieve than the architect. Because if they wanted something else, they could have gone to another architect. So it is them who first select the architect because they have the vision. So the vision really doesn't come from the architect, the vision comes from the client. So in this case, the client came to us that they want a lot non-linear architectural space. So that created a canvas for us to experiment. And within the concept of a non-linear arrangement of spaces, we tried multiple things. And we came up to what you finally see based on how much space we have on site, what is the scale we want to achieve with the kids there, what is the kind of light we want, what is the direction of the site, and everything else followed with it in terms of the cost, in terms of everything else. But the first thing came from the client, which is the most important thing for us.
Nice approach. I think we do study that in architecture college also, to start from the scratch and then the process goes along with that. So I think that's a very elaborative approach. So, can you also explain on how intuition and experience guide your design conversation in such projects?
Intuition and experience is I would say now intuition also comes because of experience. What has happened for us over the last 12 years since our practice and the years before that where I worked with Zaha and then worked before that as research at A. There are certain things which I see now or the way I see it is very different from the way I used to see 12 years back because there is enough experience to know what to look at. Now, when you start to look at non-linear spaces, right? I have seen with younger kids, and now I can see the difference. I was probably there about 10, 15 years back. That you do not know what is a good curve and a bad curve. Like when I show you a building, and if I show the same building to 10 people, 8 will say that this is a good looking building. 2 might say, because it's a very subjective feel. But at the same time, 10 out of 10, there'll be maximum 80% people who would like a building. Now, they don't know why they like a building. There's no reason to like a building, right? There might be a certain amount of certain proportions, certain things, but you don't know why you like the building. So there is also that you show a building and only architects will like and non-architects won't like. So there is a sense of training which happens knowingly, unknowingly, which starts to allow you to observe certain things in a certain manner, and only also observe only certain things when required. Now, when I see a non-linear space or when I see a non-linear form, I know what to observe in a non-linear form. I know what to observe in a faceted form. I know what to observe in a box form. Now that experience automatically starts to also turn into intuition when they overlap over many years. So now when I see a form, my first thing would be, okay, there will be an issue with building this because this curve will not be structurally stable. I don't know why it is not structurally stable, but my intuitions will say it is not stable because I have done enough. So I have created enough layers of those experience of success and failure within what my work life that my intuition will now start to take over, or I might just say, oh, take care of that edge that will be problematic later on. It's an intuition. I'm not thinking very strongly about it. But those things then start to happen. So it is this layering of experience which has now turned into an intuition to be able to look at certain things beforehand while just having the very initial because your non-linear forms can become super expensive if they are not structurally viable.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I agree. So I read on your CV and the portfolio of yours and the profile I've seen about your studio. So it seems that you travel a lot around the world and you get to see a lot of buildings around the world. So in what ways do your travels influence your design philosophy and the projects you're working on?
So the travel doesn't necessarily result into something. For me, the travel allows a certain level of understanding of what we are. I see it the other way around. Let's say I'm a Gujarati, right? And I've never gone out of Gujarat. I will never know what a Gujarati is until I meet a Bengali, right? Like, how do you define a Gujarati? I don't know because I've never met anyone else to define myself. So when I meet a Bengali, I will say, oh, this is how Gujaratis are and this is how Bengalis are. Then I'll meet someone else. So when you travel, what happens is that one is that okay, you get inspired by certain details, certain things which are very minor. But what you start to understand is what works for their climate, what works for our climate. Why have Indian architecture grown in this manner? Why are we doing this mistake? What have we seen in the West which we are copying, which is not working? So it is a multifold experience which you are gathering rather than an immediate inspiration. Because an immediate inspiration is a very visual or just a spatial way of looking at it, which has developed there because of their culture and climate and economics and so on and so forth. For us, it is very important for us to define ourselves looking at others and see where we are, why we are, and how we can improve. That is what travel, meeting people, knowing different cultures have allowed us to define ourselves.
That's absolutely right answer. So, I've also searched on your website that you guys have a different section of designing furniture, furniture designing. So, how did you approach balancing structural integrity with the visual fluidity of the loop furniture design series I saw on your website?
Idea to create furniture first started with creating objects which we can immediately experience. Now, architecture is a very, very slow process. So when you model something, when you design something, it takes a certain number of years, effort. So the entire concept of getting into furniture or smaller objects, I would say, uh, is to experience the structural aspect and the design aspect of fluid form. So, so then the entire idea behind the loop series was to create furniture which don't necessarily follow the conventional process of looking at a chair. So if I ask anyone, let's say a non-architect, because with architecture, what happens, everybody tries to draw something different. But let's say if I ask anybody else draw chairs, what they do is they will draw four legs, they will put a seat on it, and then they will have two things at the back and then put something at the back. So that is a chair part. Right? So there is always elements which do particular thing because they're meant to do something. So legs are supposed to take load, feet is supposed to be on it, so where you sit. So there are different elements performing in different ways. The loop series, the idea was to challenge ourselves to have one element do everything for us. So the sitting, the structure, the form, the visual, everything is different. So one cannot be devoid of the other was the idea. And to bring everything together into just one, which could be explored into various ways.
So, how does the concept of slow design guide the overall production process, and how does it differ from the mainstream manufacturing products and methods you have for the furniture designing?
Slow design is very, very important to us because um, when you get into making a space, so let's say it's an architecture space and then you do interior, then you want to do it very, very fast. Then the detailing level in terms of from a house planning to the site planning to going to how the chandelier would be to make sure that you see the whole and then you again go to the part you see the different. If the design is not low enough, what one is forced to do is to pick up things from the market and then plug them in. I'm not saying it is good or bad, but our way of doing things is to do as much as possible to not look for things in the market, but have them evolve as part of the design. So that's why flow is required because then flow helps in evolution. Otherwise, one has to, one is so limited to be able to just be a curator, not a designer. Nowadays, a lot of spaces which are seeing, and I'm not saying they are good or bad. So, every person has a liking, but they are a lot more curated. They are things picked up from different designers, put together beautifully, but they're curated spaces. We prefer to do spaces with a bespoke, for those clients, for what we think that house needs, and not necessarily the
Moving on to the next question. So, what role does competition and urban projects that you do in your firm play in shaping your firm's growth and philosophy?
The competitions which have done only few and unbuilt projects, the benefit of those projects are that in a very short while, one is able to bring out idea purely for the sake of idea. Now there is a level of practicality to it, but still that is not looked at in a manner which you look at in a built project. So in an unbuilt project, one is able to purely focus on the idea, which is very, very important. Now that helps to sometimes switch on something in your head, which is probably dormant for a long time. And so that is something which indirectly helps us. Not necessarily we'll take this idea and plug it somewhere else, but back of your mind, something which was dormant for a long time gets switched on, and then kind of, that helps a bit. Second thing it helps is that when you do competitions and projects like this, a large part of the office comes together, which rarely happens. And when they come together, there is a lot of exchange of ideas within the office, which helps the office also, as individuals in the office also, it helps that growth, and their growth over turn helps, in time helps us as well.
So, what inspired the concept of Vayu as a form shaped by wind, and how does it symbolize India's evolving landscape?
Vayu we have done for a company which is into transportation infrastructure and mining and things like that. So India is a developing nation, and infrastructure and all these things these are constantly evolving the landscape of of our urban India, and also to a large extent rural India, and the connectivity and all of that. And when we are commissioned to do that work, the idea was to depict a constant movement, but you cannot depict constant movement through static objects. So wind is one element, wind and water, but wind very specifically is constantly reshaping our environment. If it's windy, you will start to see either the plants swaying or the trees swaying. If you go into the rural landscape, the wind will change the fields and things like that. And sometimes they are the geometries are beautiful, or the patterns which come out is beautiful. So we took that as a concept and created this entire work, which is a large 20 feet by 6 feet artwork. Wind is just a medium of change we picked up to show the transformation. Now, in this case, the idea is actually transformation. We call it Vayu is just because we are wanting to give importance to what is transforming it. Again, in this case, why we want to give an importance to the agent is because we want to give an importance to our client for the agent of change. Understood. So in a way, Vayu is that company which is constantly driving the change of the landscape. So here they are driving the change of wherever they are working. So that is how the entire piece came into.
So, what message or emotional response do you hope that Vayu conveys to the visitors? And given its blend of craftsmanship and computational design.
I have just left it to people in terms of the experience they want to have, because it's very difficult to for an artwork of this nature. It is very difficult for someone to drive a certain kind of an experience unless the work is either too gory or too spiritual. Is one cannot determine how the experience would be. So I will be eager to know different kinds of experiences people have. Some might like it, some might hate it, some might have no response to it. But one thing we know, that when we had put that up, and we had still not sent a description to the client, everybody asked them, what does this mean? So at least there is a response of inquisitiveness which is there in that space, because one doesn't see a, a very non-directional, non-linear work as work of art in India. People generally think work of art as either a painting or a sculpture. Also, most of the people relate to very iconographic way of sculptures and painting. So if you put a beautiful horse, people will say, "Oh, very good painting." But if you put an abstract painting, people do not know how to react to it. They don't even know if they like it or do not like it. So this is that kind of a work where we want people to have their own interpretation, and then we see where it goes.
The last question for the day. How do you view the significance of project documentation and publication in today's architecture practice? And could you share an example of a particularly complex project that was meticulously documented and successfully published and had a great impact on the outcome?
It is very, very important in today's time to document. we are not very good at it. A lot of our projects are left undocumented for various reasons, specifically homes, because it is a very private space and a lot of clients are not very keen on getting it documented because you are, infringing the privacy of that person. But it is extremely important because without that, your story doesn't go out. And today, the world sees you through Instagrams and through social medias, and so unless your story goes out, you will not have similar kind of work or the kind of work you are wanting. For example, Bucky is one of our projects. The other project is the Cocoon, the school which we did, a pre-primary school. Both of them were very complex to document because a photographer is generally used to a very rectangular space, so they know how to frame a camera, they know what to line up. Yeah, you cannot line up anything. You don't know if it's a straight frame or an inclined plane and things like that. So both of them were documented by Vinay Panjwani quite beautifully. He had also done the video for both of them, and we have been wild internationally for both of them. And I think it would not have happened if we would not have also, the Western media got very, very, very interested in it because doing things like this in India is unheard of. So getting yourself documented is quite important. Otherwise, we cannot build on it. Not as a person. I will surely be able to build on it. But as an architectural or a design community in India, one will not be able to go step up because they will not know this much has been done. Because now if they see the photographs or something, they at least know what has been done. They read about it, they at least know that they are here. This is possible now. How can we go beyond that? So that is another very important aspect, where documentation and going out and sharing it is important.
Thank you so much for your answers, Jwalant, and thank you so much for giving your precious time. This was the last question for the day. It was a pleasure to have you here, and do not forget to sign up on the Fublis website to see this interview. Thank you so much.